Greetings, family. Welcome to Dark Monday, 525. I'm Dr. True Red Alpha Female, here to bring you real talk with conscious minds. Black Monday was created in memory of our brother George Floyd, who was slaughtered by a savage on Monday, May 25th at 8:20 p.m. It was on that day that Black America was forced to acknowledge the 500-year-old beast named racism. I will never, ever let us forget that moment in time. So join me every Monday evening for Real Talk with Conscious Minds, Black Stories for Black People. Peace and be well. And welcome to our twilight version of Dark Monday. I'm here with my childhood friend, Sandy Richardson. Sandy and I grew up together in Teaneck, New Jersey.
Yes, we did.
Sandy is an LPN, and he is going to share conversations about COVID-19, because I have a lot of questions to ask, and I'm sure you all do too. And Sandy's a person here to give us all the information that we need, all the facts, because what we do here is we bring you real talk with conscious people. So Sandy, you were working during COVID, the beginning of COVID, and like so many people, I think I just want to know what your thoughts are about how COVID got here. What are your thoughts about that?
How COVID got here. Well, they told us that COVID got here from that one guy that came from China. And he was in Washington State, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. That's how they say it got here.
Right.
I have nothing to refute that.
Do you think it's man-made? Because I think it's man-made.
Man-made. I think it could be man-made. I feel like this. People have been eating bats for a long time.
Right. That's how I feel too.
And nobody came up with COVID until 1919.
Yeah.
I don't kind of believe that. If you look at how people act, President Obama for his last 4 years was always talking about a pandemic, and he was always in preparedness for pandemics, which would suggest that he might have known something earlier.
You think something like that this particular pandemic would happen, or any kind of pandemic?
I think it could be man-made. I think in his preparedness, he's letting you know that there's something coming. So if he knows there's something coming, it could be natural that men are playing with and doing things that they probably shouldn't be, or it could be something totally man-made.
Right.
But I think that he had knowledge of it prior than it did.
And so he would have been more prepared than our chief of staff that we have now, that we all know about.
Because this guy comes in and started tearing up pandemic preparedness, stuff like that. He started getting rid of different, departments and so forth.
And so that makes you think. I never thought about that way. That would make me think, if he is dismantling what we would need to take care of a pandemic, right?
Then he don't care.
Then he doesn't care. But I would also think that maybe he is preparing to allow us to go through this destruction, right?
Absolutely.
Because if he dismantled what we would need in place for a pandemic, right?
Absolutely.
How do we know that he didn't know about this, and then he is dismantling what we need?
Right, but I agree.
Yeah.
But I think that he is so evil that it didn't matter. He was going to do it anyway. He wasn't going to approach this like, we're going to save lives. It was just going to be whatever.
Right. And he is evil. I think he is inherently evil. A bad seed comes around every so often, and he is that.
He was evil before he was president.
Yes, he was.
He wanted to kill the Central Park Five, right?
Yeah.
Come to find out, they didn't even do it.
Right.
And in that, he couldn't find the decency to apologize.
That's right. He is an evil person for sure. And I always tell people that he's bigger than a racist. Like, we know he's a racist. That's just part of his thing, That's one portion of who he is. So when you started working, COVID came to our area. Well, we were told like around March. Right? Is that when it hit our area? And you were working in the nursing home. Did you have any type of preparation or did COVID just hit? Like, were you all ever prepared for a pandemic or anything?
We do our normal pandemic preparedness stuff that we go through in services for every year. So this was no different in that respect. But did they specifically, when it got that it was here?
Right.
We hadn't had any extra training or anything.
There was no training and no. So when did you actually start to see the residents or the patients coming down with symptoms?
I think I was diagnosed March 21st, and maybe March 23rd. The patients started.
So you had COVID. So let's make sure we clarify that. You came down with the symptoms of COVID. Can you go through that for me? Like, how was that experience?
What happened to me was, I'll give you my theory behind me getting COVID. I had a coworker who had visited in India, and he had to come back to work. He scheduled himself to come back to work on the day he flew back.
Right.
He flew back, changed his clothes, started working.
Did not quarantine?
No, all throughout the whole building. They suggested that you quarantine at the time, but it wasn't anything mandatory that you had to quarantine. So he came to work. That was like a Wednesday or Thursday. Whatever it was, about Friday or Saturday, I started feeling like I was going to catch a cold. Sunday, I really felt horrible, but it didn't feel like more than a cold.
Right.
Monday, I went in. By this time, they're starting to take temperatures as you come in and fill out the little questionnaire.
So you were still working when you had like a cold, slight cold.
So they took my temperature that Monday morning. It was 99.9. My boss was like, could you take this again? It's a little high.
Yeah.
So this time it was 101. I mean 100.6. So it's like, oh well, you have to go home. Bergen Community had just started doing COVID testing. This is when they had the whole long lines and stuff. So I got up early in the morning, that Tuesday morning, got my test. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I was feeling horrible, difficulty walking. I'm home now.
And this was before you got results, though.
Right, this is before I got results. I didn't get my results until I think that was March 28th, the Sunday. By that Sunday, I was starting to feel a little better. But I was still coughing up phlegm and all this other stuff. I was treating it like it was asthma, so I was taking breathing treatments and had a vaporizer. And I didn't really feel good until maybe like 2 weeks later.
And then by then you had gotten your results.
And then I was positive. But I still had symptoms. I don't know how long I actually had COVID, but I was out from March until the end of May.
March until the end of May. And you stayed out that long by choice, though, also, because I remember you mentioned that you wanted to make sure that you were completely well.
Right. I mean, they was rushing me back to work, but as long as I had symptoms, I wasn't going back.
Yeah.
So I finally had to, what has to happen is you have to have 2 negative tests. I had my 2 negative tests.
Tell us about your treatment. I mean, I think this is really important because you and I talked during that time, and I thought it was really important, the information that you gave me about treating yourself, because you did not go to the hospital, and you decided to stay home.
Right. Well, what I was taking, what they call dual neb is albuterol and Ventolin via nebulizer, which was helping me breathe better, kept my shortness of breath down, and I had a vaporizer, so I was breathing steam. I drank a lot of water. You're not hungry, you don't taste anything, so I drank a lot of water.
So you had the no taste and all that. Okay.
And with these fevers, you could run the risk of being dehydrated because I was sweating a whole lot.
Right.
Every day I woke up, my mouth was like dry.
Dehydrated. Yeah. Yeah. So for the most part, it's about keeping your, and you mentioned it's keeping your lungs
Moist.
moist.
Because they say it makes it hard and dry.
Right.
So you got to keep it moist.
Right.
So you want to keep it. Drink a lot of water.
Mhm.
Breathe some steam if you can.
So that's good for everybody to know. I mean, I think that's important because, of course, do not go against the wishes of your doctor, but
Right.
we also have to use our common sense.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes my doctor makes recommendations and I go against the grain. And I think it's important to have common sense, and when you're going to do home treatment, like Sandy was saying, do the vaporizer. You know, I think that's key if everybody could get a nebulizer even, right?
Mhm.
Because if you have people in your household with asthma, you're probably going to have one.
Mhm.
But if not, it's a good idea to try to get one.
Right.
Most insurance companies cover that, I believe, right?
Honestly, I'm assuming so.
And then what about Theraflu? I think you mentioned Theraflu to me. Did you take Theraflu also?
That wasn't me.
No, okay. Okay, so steam. So everybody else has to make sure of that you make sure to keep your lungs moist, because we don't know if we're going to have another wave of this.
Right.
We've been told that we are.
I'm quite sure we will.
So
Because I don't think people listen enough to keep their masks on, wearing. I don't think people are really
we're following that.
no. And now things are loosening up.
Mm-hmm.
People are traveling.
Right.
I don't even know if you can still travel out of the state and go to another state that supposedly has COVID and come back and you have to be quarantined. I don't know if they're
But
doing that
who's really
anymore.
doing that? Like, if you
That's
go
what I'm saying.
away, are you going to come back and really stay in your house for 2 weeks in beautiful summer weather? I mean, who's been doing that?
At one time, they had the health department stopping people on the highway.
I remember that.
So,
I mean, I don't know. They're telling us there's going to be another wave. You know, I'm a conspiracy theorist. So I don't know if that means that they're going to roll out
another strain?
another wave of it. We have the vaccine that's going to be available a couple days before election. So those of you who follow your president, would be thinking that, oh, look at him. He got the vaccine and everything all ready for us, all ready for black folks to experiment on us with it. Right? Right before election.
That's an experiment. See, the problem is Americans, black Americans, some of them forget Tuskegee and all the experiments we've already taken part of.
Or we may not even know. You know, I mean, look, you have to get history from your family.
Right.
Right? From your household. Because there's so many who probably don't even know about the Tuskegee experiment, particularly when you're talking about non-African Americans.
Right.
Right?
And you're talking about the last dude from Tuskegee. The experiment died in like 1970.
Wow.
So that's not that far away.
It's not.
No, it's
That's
not.
not. So we know about that with the experimentations. How do you feel about the vaccine in general?
I'm not a vaccine person.
Mm-hmm.
The last person I trusted with vaccines was Dr. Lee Jonas Salk. So that was like in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nobody, I don't know anybody. These new vaccines, man, the flu vaccine, they say, okay, you can take this, and it's about 50% accurate. Why do I need that?
Right, 50%. So they don't require you to take that at work? Like, they don't tell you that you have to take the flu shot?
They tell you have to take the flu shot, or I can wear a mask all year.
Okay.
That's why this mask thing doesn't bother me, because I have to wear a mask all through flu season.
Right, because you're not vaccinated against it. What do you feel about the continuous reference to black folks and COVID and our underlying conditions? How do you feel about that? Do you feel it's a real genuine concern, or do you feel it's a setup, or?
I think if it was a concern, we'd have national health care.
Right.
I don't think it was a concern to anybody except me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that anybody can get COVID. I think that if COVID is what they say, and if it has to do with your immune system, you've got plenty of people who are not black that have underlying conditions.
Exactly.
And my question is, the ones that are dying, because not just black people aren't dying.
Right.
The ones that are dying, they're not saying anything about the underlying conditions, but I'm quite sure they have them.
Right.
That's the problem I have.
Right. Right.
Because you're making it seem like this. So this is what they want you to believe, that this virus attacks the susceptible black male, and also it attacks the healthy white man. because you don't hear about their underlying
You don't,
conditions.
right.
So those must be healthy.
Right. Right.
So why would a virus do that?
Right.
Or how would it do that? Why would it be able to take off a strong white dude and it only takes off the weak black people because they got all these underlying conditions? I don't get it.
And we didn't even hear about the strong white man. I mean, who is it? One of them that they reported?
No, I mean, there were white people dying from COVID. But you don't hear that they were dying from underlying conditions.
Right.
So they must be healthy.
Right.
Why is it taking out the healthy people?
Right.
Because we understand it's going to take us out because we got all these underlying conditions.
Right.
Maybe that's the question.
Right.
Because you expect it to take out the weak, right? The sick and the ill. Why these white people die? Maybe that's the real.
Yeah. And so that's, we don't even know how to accept all these guidelines and all these numbers and the inaccuracy of what they're reporting.
Right.
Right? And for me, it's to just set us up to be continuously discriminated against.
Exactly.
Because it's almost like when it first started, and you and I talked about this during our phone conversations, when it first came to TNAC, and I think it was early February, and then the chief of staff of the local TNAC hospital made a public appearance and advised us specifically, who specifically got COVID, and he announced there was one Jewish person and like 2 Asian people, but there were 19 people with COVID. So immediately, I became suspicious because then I'm saying to myself, well, who is he leaving this open to? Because TNAC is predominantly black and Hispanic and people of color.
Right.
And so I just thought that was odd to me and suspect, because was he trying to set it up to make sure that one specific group, not us of course, but one specific group was not targeted?
Right. That's what I believe what was happening. Because if you remember the whole thing, and this started some wedding, some Jewish wedding, and then at that time, weren't there mandatory things about how many people should be at these events, and they didn't pay any mind to that?
Yeah. And they were able to do whatever it was that they wanted to do, defy regulations. And I remember I did one of my little clips because I wanted to remind everyone, whenever we have any kind of emergency in this country, please don't get caught up, right? We get caught up in the moment. We're together, the heroes, because I knew, as you did, that racism was continuous. And we saw that with some of the young people in New York, right? Not wearing masks, they were getting beat down, beaten.
On one side of town, they was beating up the kids with no masks.
Right.
And on the other, and in Central Park, they were actually handing out masks.
Handing the masks out. Handing them out. I mean, they're so obvious with it,
That's one thing Donald Trump has done. Donald Trump has created brash racism or prejudice across the country. So it's not, you don't have to go down south anymore just to get it. It's up here around the corner.
No, he never did. But see, I don't think he created it.
No.
Because this racism has been here forever and ever.
He didn't create it. He just made it a little more acceptable.
Right, more acceptable. And I think that's what we're seeing on the surface now, because now we know exactly who the racists are. They're showing you. They're showing you who they are. And it's frightening, when you talk about health care with black folks, because at the same time, I know recently there were situations where some black women died during childbirth. You remember seeing that? This was recent.
Yeah, it's like the last 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, the last few weeks where black women dying during health care, during pregnancy, and they all gave stories about how during their prenatal they felt discriminated against.
I remember reading that, actually.
And that's been going on. I had someone who's a physician told me that has been going on. And so now we have something like this, the pandemic. So what are we to expect? Are we really to think that the CDC and those in power really care about the health of black people? And I think that's my problem. I have a problem with you acting as though you care about us when you don't. It's all a setup. I think it's a setup for the vaccine. What do you think, Sam?
Hmm.
Right? Like they're talking about how terrible our underlying health conditions are. I mentioned to you that I read an article from a CDC publication, which is really disturbing to me, because they talked about black people like we were third-class citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like this was a publication from June, and it gave all the rates of who had COVID, and black people were second to the natives, and talked about how society had to embrace black people, and that society had to help us, teach us how to work, live, and play, because it's those areas that cause us to be susceptible. This is what you can look it up. That's what the article said. Rather than saying maybe we should leave them alone and get our goddamn knees out their neck, and they will not suffer from all this stress that leads to all these underlying health conditions that we
They're
have.
not going to ever leave us alone because they're worried that we might actually do to them like they did to us.
And it would never happen. And that's how they don't know who we are,
Right.
because that's not who we are. Inherently, we're not that person, you know. We wouldn't do that.
No. I mean, look how far they pushed us. We haven't done anything yet.
So, as a health professional, what are your suggestions to black folks, to our community, preparing for this second wave? You talked about wearing masks.
Wear your mask, take your vitamins.
And tell us what
Sure.
vitamins.
Vitamin C, D, B, B12, E.
Take all the
Get-
vitamins, A, B,
right.
C, D, E.
Get some sunshine.
The sun, talk about the sun, because the sun, what do we get from the sun?
Get beta carotene, no?
Yeah,
And something else.
vitamin D.
Yes.
So the sun is
The
important.
sun is important because it actually helps some of your vitamins actually metabolize in your body. So you definitely have to have sun. Drink a lot of water.
And lemon juice. So strengthening your immune system.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the real thing. You need to be more healthy.
More healthy. And wash your hands. Keep yourself strong. And we can start that now. Like, you don't have to wait until flu season comes.
Right.
You know, when they come knocking on your door to give you your vaccine, you don't have to wait until then. You can start.
Because here's the real issue. You want to be able to fight all this stuff because you won't know if you have the flu or COVID when it comes.
Right. Do you suggest that people get tested? Do you think when people feel ill that they should get tested?
I think people should have been tested a long time so we can figure out where this is and so we can annihilate it, but that's not what your president thought.
Maybe the president thought differently.
He thinks if you test a lot, you get more cases, and then I guess you don't sit well on the scoring.
Right. It doesn't help with his rating.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully moving forward, we won't have the same situation that we had, particularly with black folks.
Right.
And like
we need to start taking care of ourselves.
And thinking critically, like you mentioned also, because I asked you also before, how do we, and there are many of us, particularly now, that don't trust the system and we don't trust the guidelines and the regulations, what are we to do? Like, I don't trust the government. So if I don't trust the government, how am I going to follow the guidelines that they're suggesting when COVID hits again? It's almost like whatever they say, I want to do the opposite.
Then what you need to do is to start reading and be versed on what it is that you want to be discriminatory to the government about. Whatever it is that you don't want to trust them for, you have to be more knowledgeable than they are. Because the only reason you can trust them or try to trust them or look to trust them is because you don't have enough. You're giving them the opportunity to give you all the information.
Right.
Where you should find your own information.
Right. And we have access to the
so
internet
much
now, and then there's so much information. I think that's huge, and I think that's with black folks just generally speaking. Like, we have to start getting our own information and sharing our own information, and stop looking to white folks to tell us about us. Right, to tell us about us. One more thing I want to talk about, and I just found out, I'd spoken to a nurse yesterday who reminded me of this. She was talking about the ventilators, and she said, think about how long some of those ventilators were sitting before they were used. And she mentioned that if they took the ventilators and just hooked them up, like getting them from anywhere, who knows where, that all that, dust and everything else that sat there with them, people
Right.
also could have been exposed to. Because we learned later that there were so many people that died because of the ventilation, right?
From what usually, any place that I've been, equipment like that is always covered.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
So we don't know if that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's all covered. And if they were stored for a while, usually they have somebody clean them before they put them into
Unless there's a pandemic, a
use.
rush.
I know, right? Just go get it and bring it. I hear you. I got you.
So we know those ventilators got pulled off of whatever shelf where they were and tubed into somebody, right? So there could have been so many things. There could have been so many factors.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, for being here.
No problem.
And if you could just give us a couple things to take away, what some of your advice would be, one more time.
Take
so
your
everybody
vitamins.
hears, yep.
Take your vitamins. Prepare to treat it like it's asthma. That's with the respiratory stuff, because there are also other symptoms and side effects that.
And we also heard, like, black men. There was a video of a black nurse from Washington D.C. Did you see that?
When they said they can make you sterile.
No.
I'm just asking questions.
No, I didn't. Wow.
That's what they say.
That's another reason.
Did you heard that, Sam?
No.
You didn't hear that? They said they could
Oh,
make
they
you
would
sterile.
love that to happen to black men, wouldn't they? Listen, that's a whole nother conversation.
I guess they're just trying to scare you.
That's another conversation to be had about that, if it can make you sterile.
Yeah.
Listen, they may work more on that part to make sure that whatever it needs to attack to black men to make you sterile, that will happen.
That's what it is, right?
But she was talking about how she noticed that black men were exhibiting symptoms differently from everyone else. And that when they started to feel weak, I think it was, black men were feeling, I think, cramps or something. And instead of walking around, the natural thing to do would be to lay down. And when they laid down, I think that's when their system shut down.
Well, I don't.
Blood clots, that's what it was. That's
Okay,
when the blood clots travel.
Right. Right. When they were talking about the blood clots.
Right.
Yeah, that could be. But you don't want to. Blood clots, you don't want to be moving around either.
Right.
That's sad.
Right.
Because there's really,
You said that's what?
sad. because look, we talk about at COVID time.
Yeah.
You know you couldn't see a doctor, right?
Right. Especially if you were black, you couldn't see a
No,
doctor.
you
couldn't even go to the hospital if you were black and you thought you had
No,
COVID.
no.
If you thought you had COVID, you were told that it was probably an asthma attack
Go back
or
home.
the flu, and go back home and rest. That's what you were told if you were black with COVID. Listen, this is real talk.
You'd be surprised. That saved some people's lives, I'm quite sure.
Yeah. Yes. And that's not what was supposed to happen. But we do know that there were black folks who died at home and didn't get the treatment. And there are black people that I know for a fact, people that I've spoken to, many, not even several, many who went and thought they had COVID and they would not give them the test. And I guess that was in the beginning when they didn't have enough tests.
No, what happened was you were supposed to have symptoms.
If you were black, you were supposed to have more symptoms. If you were white, you were supposed to have symptoms. If you're black, you have to have double symptoms, doubled over.
Because I'm going to tell you the funny part about it was, I was like, because when I went to take my COVID test, they said, you're only testing people with symptoms.
Right.
I was like, well, I guess I have to make up a symptom.
Right. See?
But
See?
by the time I got there 8 o'clock in the morning,
you really had
I had symptoms. I had symptoms.
Yeah.
I was coughing all over my car.
Yeah.
I was spitting up so much phlegm. I was like, hey, this is not,
You have to make it up. Yeah. Yeah. It's scary. Well, hopefully we'll be more prepared. And again, taking the advice of Sandy Richardson, LPN, for how many years? 20-something years?
20-something years.
20-something years.
I can't give you the exact number.
But you know it's 20-something.
It's 20-something.
Keep that immune system strong. Exercise. Sandy reminded you, we have to take our vitamins. Lemon juice. The lemon juice you have to be careful of too, because I overdid it and I affected some of the enamel on my teeth.
Oh,
My
God.
dentist told me, because I was drinking lemon juice all day long for 3 months. So the lemon juice, use a straw if you're going to drink it often. And just, advocate for yourself. That's the other thing. If you think you are sick and you have COVID, I know that we like to be professional, or we don't want to seem like the angry black person. You have to be the angry black person when you're fighting for your life. So if you have to go to the hospital and cause a scene to get seen by a physician, that's what you have to do.
Cause the scene.
Right? Cause a scene to save your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Because nobody else going to cause it for us.
Nobody else is going to cause it for us. So let's make sure that we, stay focused, keep it together, vote. But after voting, the work starts. So let's not think that once we vote that that's it. Okay? Because once we vote, the work continues. Thank you, Sandy, for being here.
You're welcome.
And peace and progress to all. Be safe.